Welcome back to Nothing Without Us, a disability advocacy podcast produced by Lakeshore Foundation. I'm your host, Allie B. Gorey, and today we have the joy of interviewing Dr. Graham Sisson. Dr. Graham Sisson was appointed to the United States Military Academy at West Point in 1982 and was scheduled to report to cadet basic training, but was injured just before in a head-on motor vehicle collision with a drunk driver, which left him with a closed head injury and permanent paralysis from the waist down as a full-time wheelchair user. In January of 1983, Dr. Sisson entered the University of North Alabama. He graduated summa cum laude in 1987 with degrees in accounting and minors in English and history. He received the Keller Key, highest GPA award, and Turris Fidelis, highest award to a graduating senior keys upon his graduation. In his senior year, he was elected SGA president. After he graduated, he moved on to Vanderbilt Law School, where he graduated in 1990 with a JD, and he was licensed in September of that year. Prior to being appointed a deputy attorney general and an assistant attorney general with the state of Alabama, Dr. Sisson worked for several Birmingham law firms. He served as the state's ADA coordinator and deputy attorney general with the Alabama Department of Rehabilitation Services. He was reappointed by Governor Kay Ivey as the director of the Governor's Office on Disability and state ADA coordinator. Dr. Sisson served as an adjunct law professor, teaching a disability law course at the Birmingham School of Law, and taught a course in disability law and history at Auburn University, War Eagle. Dr. Sisson received his doctorate in rehabilitation from Auburn University in 2016. From 2008 to 2015, Dr. Sisson served as an adjunct at Auburn, teaching courses in disability law and history to the graduates and undergraduate students. He also taught courses in management and independent living for Auburn's undergrads. In the early 2000s, he taught disability law at Birmingham School of Law. Now retired, Dr. Sisson's hobbies are vegetable gardening and woodworking. He is also a certified scuba diver. Dr. Graham Sisson, it's so wonderful to have you today.
It's good to be on this podcast. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, you have had such a robust career, and with our podcast being advocacy focused, I wanted to start by asking you if there were any individuals or moments in your life that really inspired your own advocacy journey.
Well, I think one person that inspired me a lot was Christopher Reeve. You know, he was Superman, and he had that horseback riding accident, and he was paralyzed at the highest level, like C1. That's the vertebrae that connects to the skull. So he's paralyzed from like the chin down, and he didn't let that. He did not let that, stop him, and he was determined to find a cure for spinal cord injury. And if he were still alive today, I think we'd be a lot closer. You know, every year they promise a cure, but nobody's ever. They've got some interventions now, but his advocacy, and he put that on the front burner. Of course, he had a little bit of star power and connections, but as an individual, that's very significant. That's like one of the highly significant disability, and he was able to make a lot of progress. And his advocacy efforts to me were inspiring to me, because I could say, something that inspires people to do things. They think, well, if he or she can do it, I can do it too. And that's what I thought.
Right.
Well, Christopher Reeve can do it. With his significant disability, I can do it too. So that he inspired me.
That's incredible. And I know that you acquired your disability in your 20s, correct? Or your teens?
Actually, I was 17 years old.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit about what life was like pre and post? You were planning to join the military, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was a track star for high school. I mean, I guess I called myself a track star. I lettered in the field, and I was physically fit, and I wanted to join. I almost joined the military. I mean, I had an appointment to the United States Military Academy. I was the number one selection for Alabama. And of course, I didn't have any physical difficulties whatsoever, and I could do anything, where I thought I could do anything. That age, 17,
Sure.
you have no fear, you have no restrictions, but at least my body didn't place any restrictions on me at all.
Yeah.
And I could swim. I was lifeguard qualified. Anything physically. My brother and I, we lived on the Tennessee River, that area up
Mm-hmm.
in northwest part of Alabama called the Quad Cities, and we lived in Sheffield, and we could go down the river and fish, but we'd also jump off these bluffs that were
Of
like 40
course.
to 50 feet because again, we didn't do anything. It was something that could give you a quick adrenaline rush, and it was in the summertime, so it was hot. So you jumped in the river, and then you got back up, you climbed back up the bluff, you did it again. It was the
Did it
first
again.
time,
That's
like the first time you do it was the scariest, but then after that you got into rhythm. I think we do it 3 or 4 times in a row, so it was very place that we call was Eagle Point, where you jump off the bluffs. There's two places in Sheffield, on the Sheffield side of the Tennessee River, that you could do that. It's pretty fun.
that's awesome. So then all of a sudden you're 17 and you acquire your disability. And what was life like for you after? And what was the process of relearning and getting back on the
Yeah,
horse, so they say, and moving towards
well,
college and career?
well, I was injured June 27th, 1982. I know that's a long time ago for many people, but I still remember it very well. I don't really remember the accident because I was had a traumatic brain injury and was in a coma. So you have to get up from a coma, after 8.5 weeks. Your body kind of wastes away because you're not really eating. You can't eat, and so your muscle goes away. And so I'd lost so much weight, and I didn't weigh that much anyway. So I had to go from that to rebuild my strength. And I remember I went to a Spain Rehabilitation Center in Birmingham, Alabama, and
Yep.
I credit those people with saving my life. So I went through physical rehab, but something happened to me. That was after I had back surgery. I couldn't have back surgery because I had 50% displacement of the vertebrae. And they had to move back together, and I have rods in my back. So after that, I used to sleep on my back. That was the way I slept. So I did that in the hospital, and nobody turned me. I got a pressure sore that went all the way down the bone. It took over 3.5 months to heal. So I had to deal with that while I was undergoing physical rehabilitation. So once that was healed up, it took a long time. We didn't do surgery. It healed up naturally. My mother helped me dress the bandages twice a day, and then going through all that, you had to rebuild your strength. I could barely push my wheelchair a city block,
Yeah.
and I used a manual chair, and so it took a long time. So I remember building my strength up, and that was I was injured June. That was between June and December of 1982 as I rebuilt my strength. Okay, then after that, I went to college, and what I did to retrain my brain, because you had to relearn, I played. And again, this is really old school, so please don't chuckle too bad. I went. I got an
Oh,
Atari
yeah.
game system, and I was able to wire my brain to the hand-eye coordination, and just the response time and everything by playing Atari. And then something else I did to retrain my brain is I tutored high school students in trigonometry or pre-cal, and
That'll keep you sharp.
that'll keep you sharp. And also, English, some other subjects. I'd done well in all those subjects in high school, and so it was a way to retrain your brain because I didn't forget that information. I had to just access it again. And if you
Right.
teach something, you really know it. And so that's what
Exactly.
happened. So that retrained my brain is having interaction with other people and then slowly reintegrating society. And I was allowed to go to college in January of 1983. And from there, I
That's
was only
incredible.
allowed to take 2 classes. I took English and history. and I made A's in both of them. And so that summer, after that, I was able to go to learn how to drive with hand controls. And once you learn, because my dad said, look, I don't mind driving you around places, but I don't want to go where you want to go. Because, I'm like, 30 years older than you, and we don't, that's, you need your independence. So that gave me
Right.
independence. Then once I could get around, I went lots of places around the Quad Cities in my car, and I
Of
probably
course.
went, to Birmingham. Had a lot of fun. So that created a sense of purpose and a sense of just belonging. The ability to travel and get around and to converse with people is very helpful when you're rebuilding, and rebuilding physically and mentally. So,
Exactly. Well, I know after your undergraduate career, you went on to a law career. What
yes.
inspired you to work in that field, and when did you know, okay, this is what I want to do?
Well, originally, I was going to be a chemical engineer. I had my chemical engineer's handbook, and I did well. I placed in a competition in chemistry when I was in high school, top 10 in a regional between the North Alabama high schools and the Southern Tennessee schools. And I thought, well, I'm going to be a chemical engineer. But then I realized a lot of the job of chemical engineer, it's of course very mental, but it's also physical. You have to be
Physical,
able to
yeah.
climb ladders and get to the place. And this was before the Americans with Disabilities Act, okay?
Sure.
And so I thought, well, what's a job that I can do that won't have any limitations because of physical disability? And that was being a lawyer. I still had my mind. I could still speak. I could convey ideas. And I was good at research. Most of law is not the glamorous stuff you see on those TV shows. Okay,
Right.
it's a lot of reading and writing. You got to be able to read and write very well to be a lawyer, to be a successful attorney. And so it's not really glamorous when I tell you the reason. Nothing really inspired me. My mother was a legal secretary, and so I knew a little bit, some of the stuff that she mentioned that they do. But as far as I want a job that I could do without limitations. And I thought the
Right.
only thing that limited me, ironically, were the accessibility courthouses. And this is pre ADA, but I found I practiced in insurance defense, and we had cases in almost every county courthouse because the insureds of an insurance company are statewide. And I was able to figure out ways to get in those courthouses. And some of the elevators are very small. And one
Yeah.
courthouse had a jury trial, and I was not able to get up there on the second floor of the jury trial, and they couldn't relocate. So I bribed some prisoners to carry me up and down the stairs every day
Oh
in a
my
wheelchair.
gosh. Wow. That is wild.
It
Oh
is.
my goodness.
When I say it, I'm only talking about a few dollars here and there, and that was it. I put my life in somebody else's hands for a few dollars, but that's the
Goodness.
that's the ignorance of youth. So,
And you were determined to get to that trial. That's incredible. Wow.
and
I
we got
know
a
that,
defense verdict in the trial. So,
yeah. Gosh. When did you or was there a moment when you knew you wanted to work in disability focused law, or did that just naturally happen over
oh,
time?
I think this is a great story. Okay, my
Okay.
last year of law school, there was a group I didn't even know about the Americans with Disabilities Act because you're in law school, you're busy. I mean, at Vanderbilt, man, they worked our
Tails
stuff
off.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say
You're
something
welcome.
else. And so when we were there, this group that I did some volunteer work for in death penalty cases. And so it was ACLU. And they said, you might want to know about this law, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it was still being considered. It has not passed the Congress yet. I was graduated in May of 1990. The Americans with Disabilities Act passed July
Ju-
26, 1990. And so before that time, and I said, okay, so what I ended up doing, my third year paper thesis at Vanderbilt, I predicted where litigation would rise under the Americans with Disabilities Act if it were
Wow.
signed into law. And that got me interest. That started my interest. And after that, my law firm was like, yeah, that's great. We would like you to develop a niche in this area. And so my first ADA speech, or Americans with Disabilities Act speech, was at a hotel in Birmingham that's no longer there, on Highway 280, and it was not accessible. I had to go through the kitchen, through near where I parked next to the trash dumpster, and I went through the kitchen, and I said to this guy, they didn't want to put a curb cut in the front of the hotel. That was all it was going to take.
Right.
And me and this other gentleman that I still remember his name, Milton Datnoff. He was a wheelchair user too, and we presented together. And, it was well received. And that was in 1991. And that after that, I had the opportunity. And what happened after that, the firm I was working for, they represented the lieutenant governor, Jim Folsom. And Jim Folsom, that year, the then governor, Guy Hunt, was removed from office for using, he was convicted of a felony. He used inaugural funds for private use. One of the things he bought was a marble bathtub in his house in Holly Pond, Alabama. And so what happened, they said, this law is new. The governor, Folsom, needs an ADA coordinator and a deputy attorney general. And so I said, okay, I'll do it, I was thinking, well, Folsom he'll get reelected? No. A year and 3 months, he was not reelected. And so he thought, anyway, that's another story. But so that gave me exposure to it. From there, I went back to private practice, but then I had another agency recruit me, and they were interested. So I became ADA coordinator again. And I was ADA coordinator for the state of Alabama for over 25 years, one of my positions with the state.
That's incredible. I'm going to ask you a little bit about that later.
Sure, absolutely.
One thing I'm really curious about is you are also an educator. I also teach at the college level, and I teach students as young as 4 and as old as 74. So I love teaching, and I know that based on what I've read and learned about you, you do too.
I do too.
Yeah, what inspired you to be an educator? I think it's just so amazing that.
Well, I think what happened, again, the way that started out, somebody approached me. They were the assistant dean of a law school in Birmingham School of Law. It's not accredited, but the folks that go there are executives. A lot of them are executives. They can't go to a daytime law school. This did at night, and they said, we need somebody to teach a disability law course, or disability rights laws, not Social Security disability, which I knew about, but they wanted. So I volunteered to do it, and I did it for like 2 or 3 years. And I taught law students. At night, I had some great positive feedback. Some of the people that I still keep in touch with today, that were some of my students that are very successful, and I'll mention his name because he did very well in my class, Kent Spraggins. That's one. So that's an example of somebody that I'm friends with. So that inspired me. And then later on, I had a friend who was a dean at the Auburn University, the section on rehabilitation counseling and special education. He said they had some federal grants where they would pay for you to go back and further your degree. And this is when I was in my early 50s. And he said, I want you to do it. And he said, don't just get a master's degree. You already have a doctor of jurisprudence or a JD. And I said, well, okay, well, I'll do it. And so I went back to school and got a doctorate in rehabilitation counseling and leadership. And that inspired me to teach. And so I taught while I was doing my doctorate. I taught undergraduates and graduates. And I taught some of the same people in my cohort, in my PhD cohort. I taught them. So I had the experience, and so that was a good experience. I taught the disability rights laws. I taught advocacy. I did those type of things. And so that was a great opportunity. But you go ahead. You have better questions. I want to hear I like hearing you speak.
Well, I think that teaching is one way that those of us that have disabilities who are drawn towards education can be advocates and teach advocacy skills without even saying this is how you are an advocate, right? Just in the way that we show up for our students, and then the way that we teach and the themes that we teach are ways to inspire our students to look at the world differently, to make different choices, and to be more supportive of the disability community, whether they have disabilities or not. Have you seen that in your own teaching?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the, I would add it one step further with that too, is it's awareness. You're teaching awareness to younger folks with and without disabilities. And I had some people with disabilities in the classes that I taught, but majority of them did not have disabilities, but they didn't know anything about disability and the struggle and the advocacy. People with disabilities, in my opinion, need everybody to be advocates. People with disabilities, people without disabilities. Because that's one thing where you cannot take your rights for granted. Right. And there was a group that said and again, my friends from law school, ACLU, they said that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. And I consider that eternal vigilance by teaching the next generation about the laws and advocacy and making them aware. And it doesn't mean that people without disabilities can truly understand what it is to be a person with a disability. But again, you do not have to be a person with a disability to advocate for people with disabilities.
Exactly. And that's what I really hope that folks listening or watching this podcast will begin to understand. And sometimes I think it's just listening in on conversations like the one that we're having that might encourage someone who's never spoken up before, or who's never been an advocate before, to speak up when they see something that's not going so well in the world for disabled people. I think that is so important. You know,
we need everybody. We need everybody. Right. And right now we're in some challenging times. I'm not going to get political. I don't care who's. And again, we have to find champions wherever they are.
Exactly.
And regardless of political affiliation, it so happens to be that I am an independent. And so I would say that, but I have friends on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, but if we sit on our laurels and do nothing, our rights will erode. And I can give you an example of where rights have eroded right now. The Air Carriers Access Act of 1986, passed for the Americans with Disabilities Act. That ensured the right of people with disabilities of all types, including wheelchair users, to get on and off the airplane, boarding and deplaning. And one of the things they did in regulations was to make sure that the people helping us on and off the airplane actually got training.
Correct.
And so a lot of those regulations have been rescinded.
I saw that.
But the law is still in place. But there needs to be advocacy on that.
Right.
Because airplane travel, if you're a wheelchair user, or you have mobility disabilities or other challenges, makes it almost not worth flying. Because your wheelchair is broken up, and they were sending the regulations on reimbursing people for damage to their chairs, which I don't see how that's legal. Again, I'm saying that as an attorney, because I don't think regulations can go against the statutory language.
Right.
So I'm a lawyer, so I had to add a little bit of law into it. So
no, it's important. I mean, the wheelchair rule, the regulations being lifted, that's very, very recent for flights, and I think it's just something that if you don't know folks who are wheelchair users or have one in your family or your friend or you yourself, you might not know. And now knowing it, it's like, how could you not want to fight for that to be at least back to where it was, if not better than where it was? Because it was already dicey. You know, like so many of my friends have gotten their chairs damaged on flights. And I hear you 100%. Now, I'm curious, you know, in your education background, you've taught classes in everything from disability law to independent living. What's your favorite class you've taught and why?
That is a great question. I think probably independent living.
Tell me more.
Because it's, again, people don't, when they think independent living, many people think it's residential. That's about getting housing. But independent living, all the way to Roberts at Berkeley, who was on an iron lung, which is, you had those before you had ventilators. He wanted to take control of his life. He wanted to make his decisions in his life. And that's what independent living is, giving people with disabilities control of their lives, making decisions where they want to live, where they want to work, where they want to eat, when they want to eat, what they want to watch on TV, as simple as that. And independent living, the movement, the philosophy, explaining that to folks, and then encourage them to be advocates for the independent living movement.
Right.
That made one of the most enjoyable. These college students, I think, the Auburn students, were just soaking it up.
That's awesome. Oh, that's so exciting. Now, tell me, when you were working at the state, when you were working for the governor. Now, I know you've worked under multiple governors of Alabama.
4 governors, yes, that's correct.
Yes. So I want to know what aspects of that job were the most exciting and rewarding, and what aspects of that job were the most challenging.
Well, they're very related, but the aspect that was rewarding was being able to go to policymakers or decision makers like the governor. I've known the governors on a first name basis. They know me on a first name. I don't say, Governor Ivy. I don't say, Kay, how's it going? I say respectfully, Governor Ivy, but be able to meet with her in her office one-on-one, just she and I, and sometimes she would have another person on her staff there, but I mean, those personal relationships with political leaders, the opportunity to be at the table. A lot of times people with disabilities are not at the table. You have to be at the table to affect meaningful and lasting change. You have to continue to be at the table. So what was rewarding, I was at the table and trying to advocate on behalf of not just myself, but all people with disabilities and their families.
Right.
I mean, without my family, I wouldn't be where I am today. The support I've got from my family, all of them. And so that was what was rewarding about it. The thing that the other side of the coin, the challenges were, because I served at the pleasure of the governor, which means that I could be let go at any time. So you had to be very careful. And I learned how to be politically aware, so that I did not make mistakes. You had to be careful about what you said. And I would always say, well, I'm not speaking on behalf of the governor. I'm speaking as an individual. You had to separate those two. And that was a challenge sometimes.
Yeah, that is really tricky, and trying to figure out how to get the most done, but also, not in a way that would drive anyone or you farther away from the goals that you have and the work you're seeking to do. What do you think, Alabama as a whole, where do you think we get it right in terms of disability rights, and where do you think we still have the most work to do?
I think we get it right with our coalitions that we've had over the years, and how in making connections with the policymakers and finding champions. In all the positions I work for, I've had the opportunity to work with those champions, and I think families and people with disabilities understand that. And so they're willing to go down to the legislature, to the state house in Montgomery. And so I think that's where we get it right. And some of the funding for programs for people with disabilities, our legislature has provided that. And so they've done well with that. And same with the governor. The governor has supported those things. So I think that's where we got right, is making folks aware, and then being in the policy of decision makers being receptive to take that information. And
Yeah.
so, and where does Alabama fall short? What's the number one issue in survey after survey? I've done statewide needs assessments. What's the number one? What's the thing that always rises to the top? It's not a trick question.
What, unemployment?
I'm stirring the pot. No, it's actually, but it's necessary to get. It's one of the things that causes unemployment. It's transportation.
Yes,
Transportation is
those
the
two were
number
my
one
top
barrier.
one.
And
Yep.
where does the state of Alabama fail on? We have a constitutional amendment that prohibits any state money from being spent on public transit. Transit is different from roads and bridges. And I've never said take money away from roads and bridges.
No.
What we've always tried to do is get a little bit of state money or local match so you get the federal money. The federal money. The city of Birmingham, when Richard Shelby was the U.S. senator from Alabama, one of the U.S. senators from Alabama, he got over $87 million for the city of Birmingham for public transit. The city could not come up with a state or local match to get that money. And so, guess what? It went to, I think, Charlotte, North Carolina, or Charleston, South Carolina. One of those cities. May have been Charleston. So we lost that out. But transportation, the transportation that we do have, has some serious funding issues. And
Yeah.
again, and I went year after year to the one of the largest departments as a political appointment is the Alabama Department of Transportation. And I talked to the head of that year after year, and they say, look, it's not a state issue; it's a local issue. In other words, that constitutional amendment.
Yeah.
So we have to amend our constitution to get over that. Or we have to
Oof,
lose
that is
city or county dollars to get
that's
that federal match
that
to
is a
make the local
big
match federal
hurdle.
dollars. It's
And
huge.
it's so tricky, right? Because I'm back in Alabama after living in New York for years, and it was like finally being in New York and being able to get anywhere at any time, and then coming back home and realizing, oh my gosh, like I can't drive at night. I can't, like there's just certain things and even though I can drive with specialized technology and a lot of bells and whistles in my car, it doesn't mean it doesn't make me anxious as someone with a vision disability, right? So
That's right.
it's just one of those things. And I have countless friends who are disabled who have to use ride shares that are so expensive. And I think you're so right. I think folks in bigger cities might not understand the weight of transportation as much, but I mean, it really does keep a lot of people that I love, and I know that you love, pretty stuck.
Oh, absolutely. I got a great friend in Prattville, and he's blind. He was a state trooper, and they were going to arrest somebody, and they came to their house, and my friend looked in the window, and the guy had a shotgun and shot him right in the face.
Oh, God.
And so, but the city of Prattville has no taxis.
Right.
I
There's
mean,
nothing you can
so
do. I mean,
yes, rely on the kindness of folks to help them get around, but in a significant other. And so I just think transportation, my dream has always been, if somebody said, if you're king for a day, and I would create a system of light rail in Alabama.
yes.
I'd put light rail down Interstate 65 all the way from Sheffield and Florence all the way down to Mobile, and have a spur that goes over to Dothan.
I think it's so important. I'm right there with you. I wish people understood the gravity and weight of this for the disabled community, because it's major. And with disabled people being almost a quarter of our population, it just feels like a no-brainer, and yet it still continues. for holding
In
spot.
Alabama, it's over 30% of the population, according to the
Right.
Centers for Disease Control. We have a very high population of people with disability, and then you include the family members. It's a very significant portion of our population.
Right. Well, you've done so much important work in the state of Alabama. If you could hover above your life and say, "This is the legacy that I want to live. This is the legacy that I want to leave." What do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy is I was just an individual that never gave up, and that I set an example for other people never to give up, and that the sky's the limit, that you're only limited by yourself. And anything that I've ever wanted to do, I found out a way to do it. Now, I can't jump off a diving board. I can't climb trees, but that's not the older I get, the less important those things are. I mean, in
Sure.
the grand scheme of things. But I can do, woodworking is one of my passions that I picked up after my disability. I didn't take shop in high school. And
Now, do you woodwork? When you're woodworking, are you going by hand? Or are you turning on a lathe? What's your
I'm doing all
style?
those things.
That's so
I'm
cool.
learning to use a lathe, but I use a table saw, a miter saw, a planer.
I love it. My dad's a woodworker, so I get a little nerdy about those
I've got
things too.
all the
That's really
major
cool.
tools, but I still
Yeah,
have these. You have to be
exactly.
careful. You have to respect. You can't be in a hurry when you woodwork. But I built all kinds of stuff, and I learned it from a client I had. He was a master carpenter, and he and I built a couple projects together, a steamer chest.
That's
And,
so cool.
and the story goes, a steamer chest. Why did steamer chests have curved tops? Think of the Titanic, okay? Why did they have curved tops? Because the rich people didn't want anybody else's luggage put on top of theirs. If
Oh
it had
my
a curved
gosh.
top, you couldn't do that. That's
Yeah,
simple as that.
that's incredible. I love hearing about all the hobbies you've developed too. This is just it's been so exciting to learn from you, and I think that our listeners are gonna learn and become aware of so much. What if you had to think? I know that was your legacy that you want to leave. What are your hopes for the disability community in Alabama and the legislation in Alabama in regards to disability?
Well, one thing, my hopes and dreams that people with all types of disabilities become more unified. We have strength in numbers. Become more
Right.
unified and network and coalesce. People are always waiting for somebody else to do it. If you see somebody else not doing it, do something about it. Speak up. That's what I'd like to see more of. And
Right.
it's not that people aren't coalescing. We've got some great coalitions, but we used to have something called the Alabama Disability Action Coalition. I had the honor of being president for a few years of that organization, and we got some things done. One piece of legislation I'd like to see Alabama have is a state version of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Oh, that would be incredible.
I think we're one of two states that does not have that. And I think the other state is, and I could be wrong on this, case because they might have actually done it. The other one's Mississippi.
I knew you were going to say
I
Mississippi.
know
Why
I
does
hate
it
to
always
say
have to
that,
be
but
us in
it's a
Mississippi?
darn fine state. It's a beautiful state. I got nothing against Mississippi.
Yeah. Well, I think that's so important, and I didn't even realize that. So that's something that I just learned that the majority of states have their own state version of the ADA. I think
Well,
that's so important.
and the question you'll be asked if you advocate for, why do we need it? We got a federal law. Well, the federal law, we could make some changes to the ADA where places where you might be lacking. And there's provision under Title V of the ADA that allows state laws with greater right not to be preempted by the federal law.
Yeah.
So state like, let me ask you this. What is one area where where we have greater rights in our law than the ADA?
You tell me.
Well, it is we have a law on service animals. And our law protects trainers of service animals that even though they don't have a disability, they're still protected.
That's so important.
You cannot, and I think it is a felony in Alabama or a misdemeanor. It may not be a felony, it's probably a misdemeanor to interfere with somebody's use of a service animal. Mm-hmm. We have pretty strong laws on service animals in the state of Alabama.
Right. We just need to expand those to our own statewide ADA. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's one of those things where knowledge is power. And if people realize it, and you don't say, when you advocate, you don't say, well, the law requires it. You first say why it's a good idea and how it benefits everybody.
Right. I mean, it's the curb cut effect, right? It's so important.
Curb cut, it's the effect with automatic doors or lever handles and doors. So even somebody carrying a lot of packages can't use their hands temporarily. They can use their elbow to open a door. I don't know how many people said, well, I'm glad that curb cut, I got anything on wheels. That's great. There's a lot of other things on wheels besides wheelchair users.
Amen to that. You're so correct. Well, is there anything else you want to let our listeners know? Anything else you're up to or excited about before we say goodbye for the day?
Well, I mean, I may be retired, but I'm not. I'll always be an advocate, and I'm willing to speak to other groups, to bring awareness. And just what I like to say to folks is go out there and make a difference. Go out there and advocate. Anything. What is your passion? Go out there and do it. Live life to the fullest. That's what I'd say.
Incredible. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so lucky to get to learn from you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. And, I appreciate the work that you do. So, Allie, these are good things, getting the information out there. I mean, podcasts, we're living in an information age. And hopefully what we've done here today will bring some good awareness and inspire other people to do things that will help everybody. So.
I always say, once you're inspired, what are you going to do about it, right? Inspiration's got to be linked with
What are you
action.
going to do about it? And there's something that, I don't know if you can see this. This goes all the way back to the 70s, okay? There's something, I don't know if you can see that, keep on trucking.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I always tell people.
Keep on trucking.
Keep on trucking and don't let the man get you down.
You got it. You heard it here first, folks. Thank y'all for tuning in, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Allie. Appreciate it.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Nothing Without Us, a disability advocacy podcast produced by Lakeshore Foundation. If you learned something from this podcast or like what you heard or saw, please share this episode with a friend, colleague, or family member. And if you know an individual who works with disabled individuals or who is a member of the disability community making lasting change and you would like to hear them on the podcast, please reach out to us and let us know about the disability champions in your corner of the world. We hope to see you next time. Bye.
Nothing Without Us, a disability advocacy podcast, is produced by Lakeshore Foundation, Allie B. Gorey, Terry Scrimshire, and me, Patrick Tomley. For more information, visit lakeshore.org.